Hi YouTube and welcome to my channel. My name is Patrick. Today we're going to talk about the top 4 concepts that you need to know about cybersecurity. So let's go ahead and dig right in. Alright, so the first thing that everybody should know about cybersecurity, especially if you're trying to break into the field, is passwords. Passwords are the first line of defense between attackers and your data, or even in a lot of cases, your bank account. So understanding how passwords work is critical to anybody who's trying to be in cybersecurity. Essentially, password strength is calculated using something called entropy. Don't worry too much about what that means. I'm going to explain the basics. So the longer and more complex a password is, it will become exponentially harder for an attacker to compromise it. So if your password is HackerMan, well, that's going to be really easy for an attacker to crack. But if your password is HackerMan69888844ABCWWXY, well, that is both longer, it's more random, and it has more types of characters, which will make it much more difficult to compromise. Another thing you need to know about passwords is that if you use the same password for everything, you're gonna get hacked. Like, it's just a matter of time, and here's why. So the idea is that basically websites get compromised. Websites get hacked all the time. And when that happens, either a plain text version or a hash of your password will be leaked by that attacker, and now anybody with an internet connection can try cracking your password, or in some cases copy and paste it. So if you use the same password for everything, here's the problem. That password's going to get compromised, and the attackers know that people use the same password for everything, so they're going to take that password and try getting into as many of your accounts as they possibly can. So that is why it's critical that you use a different password for every service. Here's the thing. The human mind is not made to remember a bunch of random passwords. That's just not how our brains work. If you have a photographic memory and you can remember a bunch of random passwords, good for you, I'm jealous. But the fact of the matter is, 99% of us, our brains don't work that way. So what we can do is supplement it with a tool. In this circumstance, that tool would be a password manager. A password manager basically stores all of your passwords, and it fills them in automatically for you. This is where it gets really cool, because often in cybersecurity, we say that there's a sliding scale, and on one end of the scale, it's really easy to get into something, but it's not very secure. And on the other end, it's very secure, but it's very difficult for you to log into. A password manager blows that out of the water, because it's going to fill those passwords in automatically for you, meaning that it's both more secure and easier, so you get to have your cake and eat it too. Alright, so the second thing that everybody should know about cybersecurity, especially if you're trying to work in the field, is device security. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be an expert in every operating system and know all the nitty-gritty details about what their flaws are like and how they get attacked. There's just a few basic concepts that you need to be aware of. So first of all, you gotta keep your devices up to date. That is the bare minimum, because the thing is, every piece of software has flaws. Like, we talk about old versions of web browsers, and we talk about how insecure they are. Consider it this way. Those vulnerabilities that make old web browsers really unsafe, those existed the whole time. Those vulnerabilities were always present. We just didn't know about them before they were discovered. And so that's why it's important to keep your devices up to date, because every piece of software has vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities will be discovered. And so the best thing you can do to protect yourself from that is keep your devices up to date. Another thing that you should be aware of is general security for devices. So, for example, you should not be turning off security features on your devices. In fact, you should be turning on optional security features such as attack surface reduction rules on Windows. And one last note, you should never use a piece of hardware or a piece of software that's no longer getting updates. If it's end of life, then that means you need to replace it. Again, the problem is every piece of software has security flaws, and they will get discovered eventually. And so if you're using the same old program since 2010, well, it's probably got security flaws that have been identified, and you're putting yourself at risk by not using something that's up to date. Alright, and the third thing that everybody should be aware of, especially if you're getting into cybersecurity, is social engineering. So social engineering is basically how 99% of hacks happen. See, attackers are not exploiting flaws in technology to gain access to stuff. They're tricking the person who sits in front of the computer into sharing their access with them. Because, here's the thing, it's much easier to trick somebody into sharing their access than it is to figure out a new security flaw in a piece of software. And this is really where it gets pretty dangerous, because at the end of the day, these social engineering attacks, they're just old school con artist tricks. Like, they're just using old concepts that con artists have used for the last century, and they're adapting them to a technical environment. So, for example, if you get a pop-up on your screen that says, you have 1 million viruses, you need to install this app, you need to call this number, it's probably a scam. It's probably a social engineering attack. And here's the thing. There's a few telltale signs that are shared between the majority of these attacks. And the first sign is that they try to create a sense of urgency. Again, these are old school con artist tricks, and by creating a sense of urgency, you're more likely to drop your guard and not think too carefully about what you're doing. Another thing to be aware of is that many social engineering attacks have an end goal of getting you to open a file, or open a website, or install an app, or call a number. But basically those 4 things are how the attacks happen. They get you to open a file, they get you to visit a website, they get you to install an app, or they get you to call a number. Those are the things that these attacks have in common. So if you're looking at an unexpected attachment in your email, then you should be aware that that's something you should be pretty careful with. Alright, and the fourth and final thing that every newcomer to cybersecurity should know, and that is basic network security. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty details, and in all honesty, networking is one of my weak areas. But you should know a few things. First of all, the OSI model. The OSI model is a way of conceptualizing network connectivity in a way that enables you to better troubleshoot it. But that's just one aspect you need to know. Basically, you should understand a few key things. First of all, you want to separate your network connectivity into smaller groups, and then don't let those groups talk to one another. You want to have as small a group as possible, as few things in the group as you can, and you want to prevent them from being able to talk to the other groups. That's often achieved through doing something with VLANs or ACL rules, but yeah, that's something that you need to be thinking of when you're securing a network. Another thing to be aware of is that the public internet is a dangerous neighborhood. You should not be exposing anything to the public internet that you don't want to have be public. So like your website. Yeah, you want your website to be on the public internet because it's full of public information. But you don't want your website to be connected to your internal network because now there's a path. If I get into the website, Now I can follow the path and get into your internal network. So, basically, you need to think, what do I have exposed to the public internet? And how can I follow the path from there into my network to my precious devices that I'm trying to secure? And, there's a few things that you should just never expose to the public internet. Like, if you have a server and you need remote access to it, do not expose it to the public internet. Do not do that. You need to be using something like a VPN, like Tailscale. They're not sponsoring this, I just really like Tailscale. It's free, and it works really well. It's very simple. But, in a lot of these hacks that you see on the news, people do stupid stuff with the public internet. Like, they expose a remote access feature of Windows to the public internet that enables anybody on the internet to try logging into their server. And obviously, if you do that, you're gonna get hacked. So my point in all of this is that you should avoid exposing things to the public internet. And when you do expose something to the public internet, think in terms of, what path can I take to get from this publicly accessible thing into my internal network? It's just something that you need to consider, and it's not something that most people worry about. So at the end of the day, there's 4 main things that I'd recommend learning for anybody new in cybersecurity. First of all is password management. Second of all is device security, making sure you have the optional security features turned on, that you're not turning security features off. And then, awareness of social engineering attacks, because that's the #1 attack vector that we see on a daily basis. And then finally, network security. You should be aware of what's exposed and how you can get from that exposure into your precious data. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. My name is Patrick. I try to make videos about once a week. If you're interested in learning more about cybersecurity, hit the subscribe button down below. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for making it this far. Leave me a clown emoji in the comments if you are seeing this part of the video. And I'm very grateful for you for watching. I hope to catch you again next time.